but more on that to come for now. This is just sort of a general overview of what you can expect. So to begin the registration process for Best for NYC, which is again that first step of how you can engage this year, you can always return back directly to the Best for NYC website as your starting point. So when you go to best4.nyc, this is what you see. This is our home page. And when you click on the bright yellow button at the top right-hand side of the page, you'll see the Take the Challenge button. When you click that, it'll take you to the home page of the Best for NYC assessment. And again, at the top right side of the screen, you see two options, one to either log in or one to start assessment. If you are creating a new assessment, you'd hit Start Assessment, but most of you will be logging back in, so you want to hit that Login button. However, what we're going to do right now is act as though we're creating a new assessment so we can see what the registration process is like with the updated version of the assessment. So when you click Start Assessment, this is what you see. This is the new beautiful outlay of the Best for NYC Challenge. And what we want to draw your attention to first is this language option at the bottom of the page. The Best for NYC Challenge defaults into English, but if you prefer to take the assessment in a different language, there are some options there that we want to direct your attention to. And otherwise, you put in your email address, you create a password that you'll remember, and you put in your first and last name, and then click that Create Your Account button. Once you do that, you can enter in your company name, and not to insult anybody's intelligence, but just as a reminder, if you're operating out of New York City, then your country of operations is the United States. And once you fill in that information, you can see this little check button at the bottom of the question. This is new, and this is what you press every time you've answered a question. It'll light up, and you can press it, and that'll collapse the question into a little stack at the bottom of the page, where you'll see a compiled list of all the questions that you've answered, and then you'll see the next question displayed in front of you. And so you can always scroll down and click on one of these collapsed questions in the stack to see what were the questions that you've already answered and how did you answer them. So now what we're looking at is the next question in the registration process, which asks about a company's sector and industry. And these questions matter a lot because they help determine the types of questions that you see in your assessment. The assessment will customize, as many of you know, to the types of questions, customize the types of questions it shows you based on your company's sector, industry, and number of employees. So it's important to select the sector and industry that most closely describe what your business does. But something I want to point out, and this is a point that was kind of confusing for businesses last year, in the sector field on this question, what we're looking at right now, there are two service sector options. One for service companies with a significant environmental footprint, and one for service companies with a minor environmental footprint. The difference here is how much of an impact on the environment does your company have? So for example, a consulting firm does not produce a lot of waste, and people might even be able to work from home outside of an office, which means they won't have to commute to the office. And their environmental impact is going to be smaller than that of a restaurant, which produces much more waste due to the production of food and the usage of big equipment that take a lot of energy to run. So if you have any ideas about what sector you think your business fits into, feel free to chat that into the box, and we can help you figure out where you best fit into the categories on the registration page. After you fill out your sector, there's an opportunity to fill out your industry category, and after that, your industry. And here, if you're not seeing an industry that best describes what your business does, go back into the industry category, go back into the sector, and sort of play around a little bit to see if you can find a description that most accurately reflects what your business does. If you have a hard time doing that, you can always send us an email and we can help you find the best description. So after that, you click on that little check mark again. We see the company, sector, and industry question collapse down into that little stack. And the next question that we're seeing is the company size question. I want to just spend a moment on this because it's worth clarifying how we treat the number of employees at your company. What we're asking for is the number of full-time employees who are on your company's payroll. And I know here it says that we're counting full-time employees as a 40-hour work week. It's actually 35. And so we're looking at the number of people on your payroll who are working at least 35 hours a week. And the reason that this comes up as an issue sometimes is because if you have, let's say, 9 employees at your company who are working 35 hours a week, and then 2 part-time employees who are each working, let's say, 20 hours a week, we would count those 2 part-time employees as 1 full-time employee. So if you had 9 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees, you would pull this little circle, not to the 1 to 9 employee track, but to the 10 to 49 employee track. And that's the track that we'd want to be on. Those are the types of questions we'd want to see for your company. And don't forget, this is also a really important note, don't forget to exclude yourself from the employee count. So if you own your company, do not count in the way that we treat employee size as a full-time employee. So if you're a sole proprietor, you would leave your employee size right there on the 0 marker where it is. Again, you select that little checkbox, and the question collapses into the stack. The next question of the registration process is just helping us understand who from the company is taking the assessment. And the next question here helps us know where businesses that participate in Best for NYC are finding out about Best for NYC, whether it's through a community organization, a friend or a peer company, or maybe a different business service that alerted you to Best for NYC. This is really helpful for us to know. Once you've completed those questions, this is the last question that I want to go over for the registration process before we move on. It's really important to know that the responses that you give in the Best for NYC challenge are kept confidential. When the 2 partners who are behind Best for NYC, which is B-Lab, a nonprofit organization, and the New York City Mayor's Office of Workforce Development, when we're looking at the data that comes in from companies taking the challenge, we see it in the aggregate, which means that your individual responses are never linked directly to your company's name when we're reporting out about Best for NYC responses. We just use these responses to better understand the businesses that are participating and to better tailor our programming to meet the needs and the interests of businesses who join the campaign. But you are still able to deny access to your responses if you do not feel comfortable having them added into the total Best for NYC data. And then the last note that's worth going over is that the questions that show up in the challenge are intentionally difficult and thought-provoking. The point of Best for NYC is not to get a high score and to win Best for NYC, but to really see, as I mentioned before, not only how you perform on your current business practices, but really identifying and examining the areas that your business could improve in. We can't stress that enough. And these little icons that you see here cover most of the categories of questions you'll see in the challenge, or that you already see in the challenge for those who already have Best for NYC assessments. And it's worth noting that as you're going through, you can always estimate your answers on the first time around and return with exact figures later if you need to talk to someone else on your team or produce some additional information. Your answers save as you go through.